I thought this about 3 weeks ago, but I didn't want it to sound stupid because it would sound stupid to say should Tennessee replace Rick Barnes, right? He's had too great of a career to even consider making a move. Would you agree with that,
Right.
Caleb? Okay. Now, that being said, I have been around programs in which I felt like the coach lost a little something, i.e., Jerry Green. And my question about Rick Barnes is, does it feel at all like he might retire after this season? Because some of the answers have been a little snippy as far as this is what we're going to do, and all I care about is wins. And I wrote about that on Friday, and he just doesn't seem to want to deviate. Stuck in his ways, possibly, but also frustrated at times. And you don't see that out of a Rick Barnes press conference. So 4 downs. What do you think of the chances that Rick Barnes retires after this season? This is nothing that I'm reporting. It's nothing I've even heard. I will be very transparent with news that we break on this show. This is nothing I've even heard. It just has that feel to me for some reason. Pure speculation, Caleb.
I don't think he retires because Tennessee has 2 4-stars committed for 2023, plus Cade Phillips out of Jacksonville, a 3-star. So he's still red hot on the recruiting trail. Rick Barnes is giving me, ready for these vibes, Dave? You'll love this. He's the college basketball version, I feel like, of Mark Richt.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, remember how Mark Richt Georgia just felt they were in the running every year, but they just felt they had gotten stale under Mark Richt. That was Texas for Rick Barnes. Rick leaves, go to Miami, kind of has the same problems, and then after 3 or 4 years at Miami, he's like, I'm out. I'm tired of this. I'm retiring. And I could see Rick Barnes being that, like Tennessee being his Miami, but he is recruiting well on the trail. I think Barnes genuinely likes the coaching part of the game more than a lot of people, and he's one of my issues with Barnes for years is that I don't think he does this on purpose. I think when Tennessee loses, I think Barnes feels like it's understood that he made mistakes and that he didn't do a good job coaching. So he immediately goes to what his players did wrong and everything like that. And I get it, players do things wrong, but it gives off very much like the same vibes Jimbo Fisher gives off whenever Texas A&M loses and Jimbo Fisher's like, well, we just didn't execute. That's code for I did my job calling the plays and my players didn't deliver for me. And
you're saying he throws his players under the bus. You're saying it in the nicest way possible. He throws his players under the bus.
Right.
I mean, he just does. I think you're almost being too kind in some sense.
You're right. He does. And I think the way he does it is he thinks it's understood that he messed up, but he has to talk about what his players did. And by the way, have you ever noticed when Tennessee wins, Barnes is still not that complimentary of his players when they win. He's still like, oh, we could have done this better. And, we need them to do this. And I'm like, I feel like to a certain degree, it's like, if you're a player, that's got to wear on you. Can you not just say, I'm really proud of the job you guys did today?
John saying, I will enjoy when Barnes has been replaced with a more offensive-minded coach. Barnes is great, and specifically a great man, a la Rick. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Georgia didn't want to fire Mark Richt. And if South Carolina hadn't made a real run and almost hired Kirby Smart, they wouldn't have replaced Mark Richt. But what did they do when they decided to? The president got on a plane and flew to where Mark Richt was recruiting up north to tell him personally. So it's that type of situation. It's that type of bond and respect for the job he's done. And again, no one on this show or at Off the Hook Sports is saying that Rick Barnes should be fired. I get this weird feeling in my gut that at the end of the year, he could say, I'm good. I've had enough. Would it be good for Tennessee if Rick Barnes retired? That's second down. Good for Tennessee if Rick Barnes retires?
I mean, that's so dependent on who they are going to get, but I would say just in a vacuum, 50-50 chance, no. And the reason I say that is, look, when Georgia moved on from Mark Richt, we've talked about this. Georgia's a program where you and I can get a top 5 recruiting class. It's an easy job. They should be competing for national championships every single year. Tennessee basketball, what's the best Tennessee basketball has ever been? We're not talking about a program that's gone to the Final Four ever. And so with Tennessee basketball, all you can really ask is that you're in the NCAA tournament every year. And I think that, it's not Kentucky. I know you brought up Jerry Green, and Jerry Green was in the NCAA tournament every year, but I think you and I both agree, had Jerry Green stayed about 2 more years, Tennessee would have been a team with a losing record because Green didn't care to coach. And
True, and had there been about a dozen other coaches, Tennessee would have been in the Final Four a couple of those years.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, look, Green walked in. To his credit, Green did put together a great recruiting class in 99, and he got Vincent Yarbrough in 98, but he had 3 years worth of Kevin O'Neill recruits handed into his lap.
Yes.
When he took over.
I'm going to go. We're disagreeing a lot, which I guess is good for debate, but I'm not even playing devil's advocate here. I think if with Danny White in place, he would hire a very good coach to great coach, maybe an up and coming guy. I think they would be more offensive minded just because they would want to change the tenor of the way the program feels. It's not Tennessee football where you can just throw out the power T and recruit at that level, but it's kind of close with Thompson Bowling Arena, with the Pratt Pavilion, with the facilities, with playing in the SEC, which has more panache nowadays when compared to the ACC and the former Big East and all that stuff. I mean, it has more panache than it used to. So I think because of Tennessee, and you can hop on a plane at any time you want to, I think Tennessee can recruit on a high level. I'm not comparing it to football whatsoever, but I think that Tennessee, with a competent coach, could continue to recruit as well as Barnes. I'm not going to say better, because then you're talking about the Kentuckys, the Dukes of the world, but I think they would be right there. So I got a lot of respect for Rick Barnes, and it kind of pains me to say this, but if the question is that good for UT? Yeah, I think they could use a fresh face on that program. And so I will say, yeah, if Rick Barnes decided to retire, that would be good for Tennessee. Now, I'm not saying that he should, and Tennessee's in a great position. It's a bird in the hand, 2 in the bush, but I think there's potential because of Danny White for Tennessee to do even better in basketball year in and year out. And I think we're going to be having this same discussion, Caleb, in a year or two if Rick Barnes stays. It's going to be a defensive program. That's what they do. I don't think he's going to up and go tempo like Nick Saban did with Lane Kiffin. I don't see that happening. 3rd down. Would his tenure at UT be deemed a success without a Final Four at Tennessee? Yay or nay?
I hate to sound like the biggest Rick Barnes defender now because I'm not, but yay, because relative to what Tennessee basketball has done in the past, and who's a Tennessee basketball he's the first Tennessee basketball coach to last more than 6 years since Don DeVoe. And in that 6 years, he's won an SEC regular season title. He's won an SEC tournament title. He's gotten Tennessee to the Sweet 16. He got them a 30-win season, and he got them to finish number 1. I mean, not to finish. He got them to number 1 year. What has he done that any other Tennessee coach? What has he not done that any other Tennessee coach did outside of Bruce Pearl reaching the Elite 8 1 year, which credit to Bruce on that. But you compare him to any other Tennessee coaches, you got Ray Mears and Bruce Pearl. Those are the only 2 coaches that have a case over Rick Barnes, and Rick Barnes might have a case over both of them too, given what he's done over 8 years.
No question. Completely agree. It's a tenure. It's a successful tenure, even if the Vols get bounced out of the first round of the NCAA tournament this year. And if that were the end of it, it's a successful tenure. I completely agree with you because of the backdrop at Tennessee. If he were at Duke, we'd be having a different discussion. All right. Should the Vols go after a Bruce Pearl if Rick Barnes did retire after this season?
No. And my answer would have been different 8 years ago when, Quanzo Martin left for Cal right after Bruce Pearl was hired at Auburn. If it had just been like a month before, I would have said hire Bruce Pearl back. Now, I totally say no. People don't understand this. Bruce Pearl's been figured out too. That flex offense has been figured out. That up-tempo press system that he came to the SEC, that he took by firestorm in 2005, 2006, has been figured out. A lot of the SEC runs tempo now. Nate Oates and his tempo system is much more fashionable than what Bruce Pearl ran, which was again developed by Dr. Tom Davis like 40 years ago and has won one national title, and that was Gary Williams at Maryland in 2002. That's point number one. Point number two is we talked about the Bruce Pearl barbecue scandal, but on top of that, he's gotten in trouble at Auburn. And you've mentioned a few other shady things to me, Dave, that has happened.
Yes.
And I think that Tennessee one had to fire Bruce Pearl because of that. Then they had Donnie Tyndall come in, and they had to fire him after a year because of that. They can't afford to bring Bruce Pearl back. And these type of NCAA investigations, they just keep building on each other. And no, I wouldn't bring Bruce Pearl back at all. I would not touch him.
I wouldn't either. I couldn't bring back a guy that lied to the university and lied to the NCAA as much as I love Bruce on a personal level. Travis saying, if we went to the Final Four, do you still feel this way? Do I feel that? Well, in some ways, I feel that Rick Barnes might be more likely to retire if he made the Final Four or won a national title. I think that's kind of what he's waiting on. And Travis, I want to be really, really clear. I do not in any shape, form, or fashion think that he should be replaced. I just, he's 68 years old, and I wonder at some point, does he say this grind, and especially the type of college basketball he knows is not the type that's winning right now. I wonder if he says to himself, man, I can't wait for this cycle, because all sports are cycles. And I can't wait for a defensive cycle to come back because I'm 68 years old. So, no, Travis, I don't want him gone. I think Tennessee's in great shape with him. As for the Pearl question, no, I wouldn't do that. I don't think he's the hot commodity that he was when he was at Tennessee. I agree with Caleb on that. But just the line to the NCAA and what that could cause and what that did to Tennessee, and really putting the then athletic director Mike Hamilton over a barrel was just brutal.